Greetings, and in some places, grand rising. I am your host, Bandele L, and I will be reporting melanated news worldwide. And this is week 2 on melanated news. So today, before we get into our show today, please smash the like button, share this video, and please subscribe. Now, today's show is sponsored by the book Navigating Melanated Love and Relationships in the Modern Era: Wisdom, Knowledge, and Collective Thoughts Through or Based on Greatest Minds, Past and Present. So, what this book will have is to discuss the conditions, the situations that have been going on in the melanated community for the past several years up until today. And it will be looked at through the lens of greats like Malcolm X, Francis Quest Wilson, Kevin Samuels, and even people that are today like Dr. Umar Johnson and even Minister Farrakhan. So there and many more. So please pick up this book on Amazon.com or indigenousmoors.org. Okay? Your one-stop shop for your Moorish needs. So today we will go into our second week of melanated news from around the world. And we will start today in Ontario, where we have the problem of so-called black teens. As it said, so-called black teens are coming up missing and vanishing at an alarming rate. So let us turn to Canada and look at what's going on in Canada with our melanated people. And is there anything that we can do to help that? All right. So this is our first topic of discussion for today. And please feel free to make comments discussing whatever content that we will be showing.
Ontario. There has been a very disturbing amount of young black males that have gone missing in and around Ontario between October and December of this year. We have Kimani Langley. He's 16 years old, last seen on October 21st in Brampton, Ontario. We have Al Pacino Mignot. He's 25 years old, last seen in Niagara on the Lake, Ontario on October 19th. We have Michael. They did not reveal his last name, but he's 15 years old, and it was published on November 12th that he was last seen in Whitby, Ontario. We have Aiden. He's 15 years old. He was last seen on November 7th in Ajax, Ontario. We have Trey Sean. He's 15 years old. He was last seen on November 17th in Toronto, Ontario. And then we have Malachi, 15 years old, last seen on December 1st in Toronto, Ontario. So that's 6 young black males that have gone missing. And if you noticed, the ages for the vast majority of them are between 15 and 16 years old. This is a problem. What are the police doing? Where are these young boys? Why are they all missing? And so many in such a short period of time. What's going on here? And what can we do as a community to help? First, we have to make sure that we keep our eyes and ears open. We definitely do everything we can to protect our young brothers. And also, if you've seen anything or heard anything, please, please, please contact your local Toronto or wherever you are in Ontario police station or Crime Stoppers, 1-800-222-TIPS, and please report. If you see anything suspicious, if you hear anything suspicious, please, please speak up. This is very, very disturbing, and I can only imagine the angst and the pain that the families of these young brothers are going through, not knowing where they are, not knowing what's happening, what the update is, if there are any updates, what are the police doing. So we as a community have to stand up and do what we can to help bring these boys home. Because at the end of the day, and we know this, I'm talking to my people, we are all that we have. So we have to rise up and do everything we can. So you see these pictures, you have their names, you know where they were last seen. So please, let's come together and bring these boys home. And as I said, let's continue to be what they say in our community, which is it takes a village, right? So let's, as you know, as Black people, let's be that village. Let's rise up and let's keep an eye out on our young Black youth, because there's a pattern here and it's really, really troubling me. So let's get together. Let's please work and hope and pray for these families and for these young boys and this one young man, that they are okay and that they will be found safe and sound. Let me know what you all think about this.
All right. So this is something that is troubling, something that's going on in many other places in the world. Please, if you guys have any information regarding these children, if you've seen them, please report it to the number that was given. And as a community, we really have to look out for each other. So I pray for those families that there is a safe passage for those children and young adult. So as we move along, our next topic is dealing with affirmative action. As many people have realized and know that affirmative action in America has been dismantled, and the repercussions of that are going to be felt, and they're being felt. And so this actual article is dealing with how melanated people, so-called Black, and their enrollment it has changed since the affirmative action ban. So let us take a look at what's going on in the United States with the ban and how it relates to the HBCUs. All right. So check it out.
Right now, high school seniors across Hampton Roads are busy applying to college, and this is just the second class applying under the new Supreme Court ban of using race as a factor in admissions. Some administrators feel that decision will influence where many young people apply. Already, more Black students are choosing historically Black colleges and universities, and counselors believe that number will continue to rise.
This is the HBCU College Expo.
Side of your academics, what are you looking for? What are you interested in?
So with our HBCU, it has historical background, it has friendships you can make, it has brotherhoods, sisterhoods. I can't wait to see the rest.
If I go back old school, and what I initially told my children was, you will always apply to an HBCU because at one time that was the only university or higher ed that would accept us. Not knowing how schools were going to embrace the new laws regarding affirmative action.
Over recent years, other events have supercharged the desire to attend HBCUs, like the racial reckoning following the police death of George Floyd. But it's a lot more than that.
What we're seeing is that, yes, students are choosing HBCUs more, even in the last 2 years than I would say 5 years ago, but we really started seeing it more than 5 years ago.
The Access College Foundation that sponsored this expo has advisors in all Southside high schools at Hampton Roads and the Eastern Shore. They help students apply for college, scholarships, and financial aid.
We're preaching best fit all the time to all students, meaning best fit for you in a college or a post-secondary opportunity of academically, financially, socially. And so for a lot of those three reasons, we've had good reasons for our students to choose HBCUs recently.
IC Norcom High School senior Journey is meeting with her access counselor. She's one of the top students in her class.
And look,
today,
I'm delighted to offer you an admission for the fall 2025 semester as a university scholar in recognition of your outstanding academic performance.
She gets another college acceptance letter, this time from Old Dominion, along with the scholarship.
Awesome! And that's renewable.
Journey has some decisions to make, but HBCUs are at the top of the list.
I would say yes because of where I go to school, and IC Norcom is a known historically Black high school. Seeing the different schools, it really opens my eyes to what I possibly can do in this world.
Okay, so what do you guys think about what's going on? Is this a positive gain? Possibly because HBCUs will, increase their attendance. And that the fact that, a lot of times melanated people wanted to go to other schools because they seem like they would excel more, but they found themselves in a very hard times. Like going to a predominantly white school, maybe, or Ivy League school has a lot of pressure and it comes with a lot of challenges that maybe not seen or felt under a HBCU. And so this may be a positive thing. You guys tell me, what do you think about the changing of the affirmative action and the increase in enrollment of melanated people in HBCUs? So with that being said, one of the things that we know is that when you go to school, college, is that you're looking to get a good job. And so that's why you're going to college. So with this article, it kind of goes along with what we just looked at, because this article is saying that there's a sister that says that anti-Black gatekeepers are using job descriptions to push Blacks out. And so, what we're going to see is it, other melanated people gatekeeping? Are there other ethnicities that are gatekeeping Black people from getting jobs and discriminating? And are we seeing a reversal of things due to the ban on the allowing discrimination at colleges and things of that nature? So are we seeing a change? So let's look at this article and see what's going on.
I want y'all to watch this video of a sister who was talking about the plight of Black Americans in California regarding the workforce. Check it out.
Other people of color are not willing to speak up for Black Americans whatsoever. The only time they speak up to help Black Americans is when they see Black Americans have an advantage that they don't have. Take affirmative action, for example. When they believed that Black Americans were getting into Ivy League students based off affirmative action, when that really wasn't the case. The only time that other people of color speak up is when they see Black Americans have an advantage that they don't have. Otherwise, they are silent. It also seems like there's an issue to keep Black Americans at entry-level positions as well, and to bully them so they have a harder time moving up in the ranks. Platforms like Indeed and LinkedIn need to do a better job at regulating if these companies are really hiring or not. Because what these companies are doing are they're using LinkedIn and Indeed as a social media tool. They're posting that they're hiring and doing all these paying for the promo, but it's really a marketing tool when they're really not hiring. It seems like LA or California is trying to push Black Americans out, and they're starting with the job industry.
So as y'all heard her say,
she feels like California is trying to push Black Americans out, starting with the job market, if you will. Now, she also went on to say that only time people of color, not Black Americans, speak up in regards to what Black people are doing or got going on there is when they feel like they can benefit from that or feel like they're being left out. And she mentioned affirmative action, right? We know what the Asians did in regards to the affirmative action educational component, where they took it to the Supreme Court and they got rid of that. Now, in the longer version of the video, she referenced a case study that was done by the Los Angeles Black Worker Center that basically says, yes, Black people are not getting quality jobs and it's a form of discrimination, right? Well, there's a couple of things here. One thing, they didn't just start with the job market to push Black people out of California. They started with the housing market and everything else you can think of. But there's only about less than 6% of Black people in California. Most Black people now live in the South, where we started from, right? Especially after slavery, if you will. And so, yeah, Black people cannot afford to live there. And so, yes, they are bringing in Hispanics or other immigrants to come in and do the work for a lot cheaper, right? Because Black Californians are like, no, I'm not going to be working for no $7.25, right? I'm going to need me, about 20, 25, 35, because that's what they say minimum wage should be, between $25 and $35 an hour to even be able to just live decently, right? So, yeah, they've been pushing Black people out, which is why we need reparations, because Black people should be able to live in California. I'm a Californian. I would love to go back. But I know I have to bust 50 hustles in order to just stay there, right? And it shouldn't be that way. There's people who are born and raised in California, like myself, that are like, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else because I just cannot afford it. Most people who work in California, if you're not super wealthy or even a little bit wealthy, they have to combine a whole bunch of incomes to just make it work. The housing market is through the roof. The average price of a home in California is about $800,000. And I'm not talking about no mansion. This is a regular house. And, if you work in fast food, I think you're going to get about $22 an hour, but still, that's nothing. Everything is high there. Gas, food, everything you can think of is high in California. But yet Black people cannot afford to stay there, but they'll bring the immigrant over there. Yeah, they'll pay them a wage. But see, the thing about the immigrant, though, and this is what we really need to talk about, is they know how to practice group economics. Yeah, they'll go do a minimum wage job and they'll do a whole bunch of them. They'll put it together and say, okay, great. Now we all about to start getting up out of this house. We're going to go buy another one. We're going to wash, rinse, repeat. See, they know how to do that. We once knew how to do that, and we need to learn how to do it again, right? So that we can stay in places like California. Let's buy the block like they do. Now, I'm not saying we should be all right with working minimum wage. We shouldn't be. But as she said in the longer version of the video, it's the quality jobs that we should get, especially when we are qualified. But we know, as she also said too, they do a lot of gatekeeping. And a lot of times it's the people that they hire and that come from other countries that do the gatekeeping. Oh, no, we're not hiring. I did a story about a McDonald's in California where they said it was all Hispanics there and no Black people. Because, California raised the minimum wage as fast food. I think it's like $22 an hour or something like that. Nevertheless, there's no, we're not hiring. But there's a sign outside that says that they were hiring. So they do a lot of gatekeeping. But again, Black people, let's start practicing group economics. Let's build our stuff so we get to the point where we're not begging them to hire us. We can hire our own. Because as I always say, go to any of the other people of color stores, whether it's Hispanic, Asian, Arab, or whatever, you're not going to see no Black people working there. If you do, it's rare. They're going to have their people working there. And if you walk your Black self in there and say, hey, I'm looking for a job, they're going to say, we're not hiring. And they'll turn around and hire somebody that look just like them because that's what they're supposed to do. However, they set shop up in our neighborhood and we give them money when we should be like, no, I'm sorry. You won't hire us. You don't put money back into the community. You can't have our money. In fact, we're going to wait and we're going to build our own store or whatever it is there. So yes, I agree with that, sister. Something needs to be done. But more importantly, we need to do it ourselves. And yes, we want our reparations too. So anyway, y'all tell me what you think of that. And for more.
All right. Like she said, please tell me, what do you think of that? Very interesting. I mean, affirmative action has been canceled. And now they are seeming to discriminate more, and we're seeing it. I did not understand or know that, that people were leaving California such, which I can see because of even the rising prices that we see today in the rest of the United States. So things are very difficult and hard right now. And even under this administration in the United States, we're still seeing a lot of things happening in discrimination amongst melanated people in America. So, hey, you guys drop a comment on this particular subject and tell me what you think. So, moving right along, we've got to break up a little of the monotony. One of the major things that's going on around the world, particularly in the United States, we've seen is the so-called UFOs. And, what is the melanated take on these things? So let's look at what's going on. I've got Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club talking about what's going on with these UFOs, or what they call UAPs. All right, let's check it out.
I want to connect some dots here because they are connected. Okay, when Donald Trump was on the Joe Rogan podcast, they had a conversation about aliens, not the ones Trump wants to deport. Okay, the ones from other planets. Let's listen.
There's a lot of interest in it. One of the things that there's a lot of interest in the people coming from space, Yes. And I know you're interested in that. Oh, very interested in that. How much did they tell you about that? A lot. Really? Yeah. What'd they tell you? Well, it's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane,
That's dot one. But there's a man named Cliff High. You should Google Cliff High. He is a researcher known for developing a technique called predictive linguistics, which involves analyzing internet data to predict future events. And based off that conversation with President Trump and Joe Rogan, he predicted a future event. Let's listen.
But what we do have some justification for suggesting is that there will be 39 days between the temporal marker of the Trump interview and the appearance of this visible contention. It's the visible contention, space aliens. Okay, so what happened? Sort of very complex kind of Independence Day kind of right? Nobody will know who the hell is doing what with whom. Now, so anyway, now we have a strange thing where there's swarms of 20-foot drones flying around military bases. So unknown. Nobody knows who owns these drones, who's controlling them. At least they're not telling us guys.
Now, my whole life, 1 + 1 has equaled 2. But then I heard Terrence Howard on Joe Rogan, and regardless of what he thinks about math, 1 + 1 still equals 2. Trump and Rogan had this conversation. Cliff High, who previously predicted the 2004 Indonesian tsunami, stated that an alien invasion will be triggered 39 days after Trump's appearance on Joe Rogan. Trump's interview took place on October 25th, 2004, marking the start of the countdown. We first started seeing these SUV-sized drones on December 3rd. Either we are in the midst of one of the greatest social experiments of all time, one of the greatest pranks of all time, or we being invaded by aliens. Okay, according to Cliff High, the alien invasion will involve air battles between UFOs and military forces, with UFOs even engaging in combat among themselves. Listen, I don't know what's happening. I just know that White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby is telling us these SUV-sized drones are manned aircraft. It's not one, it's not two, it's not several, it's a lot of them. One of my peoples in Jersey sent me a video last night of 8 of them over her neighborhood. If this is manned aircraft, then whose mans is this? Okay, who are these men? Are they little and green? And why are we okay with what's happening? Kirby, your statement didn't answer any questions. For me, it raised even more because I'm a common sense purist. This is what happens when they keep us looking down at our phones. We are slaves to the lies that our smartphones tell us, and it causes us to ignore the realities all around us. You can call people like Cliff High crazy. You can call them a conspiracy theorist, but I don't see it being a coincidence that he predicted an alien invasion would happen 39 days after Trump's appearance on Joe Rogan, when they was on there talking about aliens, and then all of a sudden flying SUVs are all over New Jersey. Why are they just flying over our residential areas? What if they crash into our houses? What's the mission? Is this even lawful? Why wasn't the public informed about these operations ahead of time? Look, man, American government, it's okay to be honest with the American people. Just admit either you don't know what's going on up there or you do, and it's not something you want us to know about. Because all Black Twitter going to do is make jokes anyway. Okay, the American people are not going to care unless you tell us it's the Kardashians and Taylor Swift up there driving one of those SUV-sized drones. Look, we can avoid reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality. I don't know what reality currently is, and I don't know what the consequences of avoiding it will be. But I just want us to be aware of what our current reality truly is. Please give White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby the biggest hee-haw.
All right. So, like you guys, like I said, we've been hearing about this for the last few weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And how is this going to affect the melanated community? Something that we haven't talked about is what is really going on. Are these really aliens? Because there's orbs, and then there are the drones. And so what has been said is that these drones are, some type of government thing, or man-made. But there are orbs that seem to be what we would consider alien. And so that is the key. So you guys look out for that. If you guys got any, suggestions or better understanding of that situation, please comment in the comment section. All right. And so I wanted to break the monotony up. So let's move our focuses to Africa. What we got going on in Africa. There's a lot going on in Africa, as we've discussed on our previous episode. Africa is going through change, and in various places. Our focus today is going to be predominantly West Africa. So what we're looking at is, on this particular topic right here, is Liberia. If you guys know about Liberia and the history behind that, please leave a comment on that. Liberia is a country that was created by American, white Americans, that created Liberia for enslaved people, melanated people, so they could have a place. Particularly some of them saying to go back to Africa, but others have other theories on what slavery was like, which we're not going to get into today. But Liberia was made or created for enslaved melanated people to have a home, a place to go. So let's look at what's going on, because there's turmoil going on in Liberia right now. Let's listen.
Shifting our focus now to Liberia in West Africa, where the parliament was set on fire amid anti-government protests and political tensions. A major fire broke out at Liberia's Capitol building in the capital of Monrovia. This was the second time in a week that Liberia's parliament caught fire, and came on the second day of the anti-government protests. Videos show flames engulfing the building, with thick black smoke rising high into the sky. The flames destroyed the entire joint chambers of the legislature. However, no one was in the building at the time, and firefighters quickly rushed to the scene to contain the spread. Authorities say that the cause of the fire is not yet known. But the blaze comes at a time of political turmoil and protests in Liberia. The protest began with outrage over the ouster of the parliament speaker, Kanati Kofa, who is a member of Liberia's opposition party and has been accused of corruption by the government. Lawmakers launched a bid in October to remove Kofa, accusing him of corrupt practices. The House of Representatives has been facing a power struggle since then. The Supreme Court ruling has failed to solve the internal dispute. After months of tensions, protests began in the capital on Tuesday against the move to remove Liberia's parliament speaker. The demonstrators are also calling for the president, Joseph Boakai, to step down. On Tuesday, police arrested dozens of protesters and used tear gas to disperse the crowds. However, it is not yet clear if there is any connection between the parliament fires and the political situation in Liberia. But the police have taken at least 4 people for questioning. Now, these people include the Parliament Speaker Kunati Kofa and the prominent figure in the House of Representatives, Frank Foko. The representative had allegedly uploaded a video on Facebook recently in which he had threatened to burn the chambers. Now, neither he nor the Parliament Speaker Kofa have responded publicly to the accusations. Meanwhile, President Joseph Boakai has expressed disappointment over the incident and has ordered the security agencies to investigate. The government has also offered a $5,000 reward for more information about the fire. Amid the growing tensions, Liberia's parliament is witnessing a deadlock. Liberia's law provides that the speaker can be removed by a 2/3 majority of the House. But without the necessary support for that, the proceedings have stalled, and the government has also not been able to pass the annual budget.
All right. So what do you guys think is going on in Liberia? Obviously, the government is having difficulties. Do you think they're going to wind up outing the president? Do you think that the protest is linked to the fires? Or do you think the government did it? What do you think? What do you think, guys? So please leave a comment. So before we get into our next topic, let me show an ad. We'll be right back.
Yes, knowledge is for the people. Get your books today on indigenousmoors.org, your one-stop shop for indigenous needs.
All right, we are back. And our next topic is dealing with West Africa, Burkina Faso. And they have found a way to make gold. So let's check this out. Tell me what you think.
Guys, Burkina Faso citizens just figured out how to turn coal into actual gold. Turning these mineral resources into gold happening in Burkina Faso. How possible could this be? It happened in Burkina Faso, as you can see. Only in Burkina Faso this can happen here in Africa. Yes, I told you guys, 3 to 5 years to come, nobody will recognize Burkina Faso again. Ibrahim Traoré, the Burkina Faso president, is not only building infrastructures, he also making sure that Burkina Bees, they are productive. He has stopped them from travel to Europe, to Western world to work. He told them all of them must be in Burkina Faso to produce something from scratch to finish. He will provide the equipment, the finance necessary, but all of them must be in Burkina Faso to produce something from scratch to finish. And they are doing so. They are doing so. One of the poorest countries here in Africa before, Burkina Faso, they just built universal health care, paid their loan, building the largest teaching hospital here in Africa without collecting loan from IMF, from World Bank, building schools, hospitals, roads, factories, industries, stadiums in Burkina Faso, many things at once without collecting loan. In fact, they have been paying some loan the former government borrowed from IMF, from World Bank. They have been paying it. Ibrahim Traoré doing so in Burkina Faso, only in Burkina Faso. Few years to come, many Africans will be looking for visa to travel to Burkina Faso. Yes, this is what is happening here in Africa, in Burkina Faso, guys. Drop your comment on the comment section. What did you do? Share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Shalom.
All right. So this is very interesting. this country, this West African country, is very poor, as he has spoken, and he's saying that they have found a way to create gold out of coal, which is how perhaps how to do it. Very interesting. I mean, what would be the impact? He's saying that within 5 years, you would not be probably able to recognize uh, Burkina Faso because of the wealth that can be created or that will be created from gold. And so that's a very exciting to know. You guys let me know what you guys think about that in the comments because that is very interesting indeed. All right. All right, as we move along, what we have next is still dealing with Burkina Faso in regards to the growth. We just mentioned that they said they're able to make gold out of coal, but that also plays along with what they're doing now because they have created their bank and they've breaking away from their bank. So let's look a little bit more into what's going on in the country and the plans and how this is to affect that part of the region. All right, let me go back just a little bit.
Burkina Faso's military ruler, Captain Ibrahim Traore, has opened the West African nation's first state-owned bank. The bank, named the Treasury Deposit Bank, was officially opened in the capital Ouagadougou on Friday, August 2nd. Traore said the bank will be closer to the people and will contribute to the country's socio-economic development through a more appropriate method of financing projects and programs. The transitional president urged both the public and the private sectors to make use of this bank to participate in the collective construction of a sovereign economy. The bank's key objectives are three: to provide infrastructure financing, to support local businesses' financial needs, and to support the development of Burkina Faso's growth sectors, with agriculture being a key growth driver. Until now, Burkina Faso is a member of the Central Bank of West African States, which issues currencies and manages monetary policy for member nations of the West African Monetary Union, WAMU. WAMU member states are 8. They are Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Togo. The Central Bank of West African States has the exclusive right to issue banknotes and coins through WAMU member countries, which share the West African franc common currency. Burkina Faso's banking and financial sectors has approximately 16 banks and is the third largest among WAMU member states, behind Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal. Despite insecurity in recent years, the banking sector in Burkina Faso is relatively profitable and well capitalized. However, credit is highly concentrated among a few clients and few sectors of the economy, with an estimated 15% of the population owning bank accounts. Traore, who has led Burkina Faso since the coup of September 2022, has pulled his country out of the West African regional bloc ECOWAS and also mounted anti-French sentiments. It remains to be seen whether the latest unveiling of the Treasury Deposit Bank would move Burkina Faso, a country of 23 million people, away from the Central Bank of West African States. In 1972, Mauritania, which was once a WAMU member state, withdrew from the Central Bank of West African States and created its own currency.
Very interesting. So this goes along. You see, the African continent, the African continent is breaking away from the West. This is a major deal, y'all. So before I get into this last video, I want you guys, if you guys got any news, melanated news around the world, please send your clips to bandele227@gmail.com. And I will use those news topics because we need news. Our communities don't have a lot of times the sources. If living in a predominantly European centered society, we don't necessarily have news presented to us about us. And, of course, this is what this channel is all about, all melanated. So please send your videos and news sources to bandele227@gmail.com. All right. So this last video is going to go along exactly what we've been dealing with, the trend of, African countries breaking away from the West. And this particular one, we're going to be looking at the Ghana. The title is Ghana Shocks the World with its
just a coincidence.
Military bases.
If you think Africa is,
excuse me, y'all, that this is going to show about the changing of hands, like where they're no longer allowing military bases in Ghana and other countries. So this is going to give you just it's a longer clip. So check it out. We're going to get into this. Very interesting. And this is the last segment for today. So pay attention.
Can Ghana's new president remind the West they are dealing with a strong leader and not a puppet? John Mahama's victory isn't just about Ghana. It's about something much bigger. If you think Africa is just going to sit back and let the West call all the shots, think again.
That's right.
Ghana's shift under Mahama's leadership is like a massive thunderclap signaling the end of an era where Africa plays second fiddle to Western interests. This isn't just about Ghana's foreign policy. It's about Africa rejecting centuries of exploitation and taking its seat at the global table. But what is Mahama doing differently? Let's find out. Mahama didn't just win a presidential election. He won a battle for Ghana's soul. This is about economic independence. Ghana's been sucked dry by foreign interests for far too long. Foreign loans, foreign companies, foreign control. But Mahama, he's had enough. He's got a plan, and it's not to follow Western orders. Let's break it down. Ghana has been one of the most economically dependent nations in Africa, relying on the West for foreign aid, loans, and development assistance. But that system has done nothing but keep Ghana in a cycle of debt and dependence. Mahama is flipping the script. He's talking about real self-sufficiency. It's not just about keeping the lights on or propping up a broken system. It's about creating a sustainable economy, driven by Ghanaians for Ghanaians.
It is the reason we would be initiating important governance reforms and sometimes initiate severe measures in the next 4 years to reset our nation and bring it back on track as the Black Star of Africa. The journey is not going to be easy, my brothers and sisters, because the outgoing government has plunged our dear nation into an abyss. However, we are determined to work together with you to build the Ghana we want. And I am certain that we shall win the battle. We intend to work together to restore the shattered confidence in our politics and governance system.
This is about building a country that doesn't rely on foreign handouts, but stands on its own 2 feet. Ghana can't thrive if it's constantly looking to the West for solutions. And Mahama knows this. He's got a vision for homegrown solutions, empowering local industries, cutting out the middleman, and putting Ghanaian businesses in the driver's seat. He's aiming to boost agriculture, improve infrastructure, and invest in education and technology. But here's the kicker. He's not doing it for Ghana alone. Mahama's leadership is a blueprint for other African nations to follow. It's time to stop begging the West for help and start making things happen at home. But how does Mahama intend to do this without falling into the same trap of relying on Western investment? How does Ghana forge ahead without foreign influence? The answer is simple: unity. It's not just about one country. It's about building an empire, and Ghana is leading the charge. Ghana isn't in this fight alone. For decades, the nation has been fighting alongside other African countries that share the same vision: a united Africa, free from foreign dominance. Mahama's vision is clear. Africa has to stop depending on the West for everything. From Mali to Burkina Faso, countries are finding common ground in resisting neo-imperialism. And guess who's leading the charge? You guessed it, Ghana. The power of this collaboration cannot be overstated. The African Union AU and ECOWAS have always played vital roles in maintaining regional peace and promoting economic cooperation. But under Mahama's leadership, Ghana is poised to take a more prominent role in shaping the continent's destiny. The focus is no longer on appeasing Western powers. It's about building African solidarity. Ghana has always been a strategic player in West Africa, but Mahama is taking it to the next level. His leadership is about more than just diplomatic visits and trade deals. It's about building a network of mutual support. Think of it like a family. When one country in Africa wins, all of Africa wins. Mahama is setting the stage for a future where African nations stand united against the forces of neo-colonialism, working together for mutual benefit. His collaboration with countries like Mali and Burkina Faso isn't just about economic growth. It's about creating a solid front against Western interference. But what can be done? Ghana gave practical examples. Ghana just dropped the mic and said, "We're done with foreign military bases." The US thought they could just keep their troops stationed in Africa, using the continent as a chessboard for their own game. But guess what? Ghana said, not anymore. Ghana decided to close all US military bases. The closure wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a well-planned move to assert sovereignty, to tell the West that Ghana is no longer a puppet. You don't get to dictate our future, not anymore. The US had long claimed its presence was for security purposes, fighting terrorism and stabilizing the region. But let's be real here. Ghana wasn't buying it. The people of Ghana and the wider African community had grown weary of foreign military presence, which often disguised itself as protection while serving Western interests. When Mahama stepped into office, he made it clear that Ghana would no longer be part of that game. The base closure was an act of defiance, an attempt to finally say, we will handle our security without relying on foreign military muscle. But the question lingers, is this the start of something bigger? Ghana isn't the first African nation to take action against foreign military bases, and it definitely won't be the last. As Mahama's leadership pushes forward, how will this decision influence the continent's broader military policies? Are we on the brink of an Africa that governs its security without Western involvement? Ghana isn't the only one throwing out the old playbook. Africa's waking up. It's happening all over Africa. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they're all saying, enough is enough. This isn't just a coincidence. Countries across Africa are closing US military bases at the same time. Is this the start of a continental uprising against foreign military dominance? You bet it is. What's going on here isn't just random. This wave of resistance is deeply connected to Africa's growing sense of unity and a collective desire for sovereignty. For too long, African nations have been pawns in the geopolitical chess game of the West. But no more. Countries like Mali and Burkina Faso have had enough of being treated like battlegrounds for foreign powers to settle their disputes. Instead of relying on foreign military forces to keep the peace, African nations are taking the responsibility into their own hands.
Good morning, Gareth. Hi. The US military has about 27 operational bases across the whole African continent. Most of those are in your typical conflict zones, in the Horn of Africa, in the Sahel region and West Africa, where the main focus is counterterrorism. The Trump administration had been talking about drawing down those military forces, but the Biden administration seems to be, as far as we can fathom from the initial Africa policy plans, willing to maintain 6,000 US military personnel overtly on the African continent. Our concern now is that a number of African governments are allowing covert operations not fully under the framework of their legal or constitutional regulations. For example, in West Africa, the small archipelago of Cape Verde, not many people will have heard of it before, but it's a very strategic position.
Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. This movement is far more than just a reaction to foreign military presence. It's about reclaiming Africa's future. The closure of foreign bases marks a new chapter in African politics. Countries are increasingly banding together, rejecting the old guard, and deciding that Africa can and will stand on its own. But here's the big question. Can this movement sustain itself? Will the West respond to Africa's growing unity with force? Or will they finally respect the continent's desires for sovereignty? Spoiler alert, the old slave-master dynamic is on its last legs. For years, the relationship between Africa and the West has been defined by exploitation. But Mahama and others like him are ready to flip the script. No more. Africa is looking for new ways to engage with the West, but on its terms. The goal? Fairness, equality, and mutual benefit. Let's not sugarcoat it. Africa has been treated like the world's trash bin for too long. The West has reaped the benefits of Africa's resources, all while exploiting the people and systems that make the continent tick. But now African countries are saying, enough is enough. Mahama's vision for a new type of relationship with the West is rooted in partnership, not dominance. African nations, led by figures like Mahama, want to rewrite the rules of engagement, not as subordinates, but as equals. But the question remains, will the West agree? Are they willing to move away from the exploitative practices of the past and treat Africa as a partner? Or will they continue with their centuries-old mindset, seeing Africa as nothing more than a resource for their gain? This is the crossroads Africa stands at today, and how the West responds will determine the future of global geopolitics. Will they finally play fair, or will Africa force their hand? Africa is rising, and you better believe it's not asking for permission. You've been hearing whispers, but now it's getting louder. The next decade will not look like the past. The days of Africa being exploited for resources and kept under the West's thumb are over. A new breed of leaders is emerging, leaders who are not only rejecting the old ways, but are actively rebuilding the African narrative. Ghana, under Mahama, is showing that the continent has the power to chart its course, and others are following suit. Let's break it down. Africa is not some poor, helpless continent that needs saving. This narrative of Africa as a charity case has been drilled into our minds for far too long. It's a dehumanizing myth that the West has pushed to justify its interference. But here's the reality. Africa is rich in resources, culture, and human potential. And now, African countries are realizing that they don't need foreign powers dictating their future.
I think what people don't understand is how rich of a continent Africa really is. Do you realize, man, it's the only country in the world that don't have to import nothing. They don't need your food. They don't need your energy. They don't need your gold. They don't need your diamonds. They don't need your coal. They don't need your uranium. They don't need your platinum. They don't need nothing. Africa is the only country in the world, and they don't need your oil. They ain't got to import nothing.
From the streets of Accra to the hills of Addis Ababa, young African leaders are embracing the Pan African vision, a vision of a united, self-sufficient Africa. Mahama's leadership is part of this broader movement where African nations are rejecting dependency on foreign aid and military assistance. Do we need a strong Africa? The world isn't ready for what's coming. An independent, confident Africa is about to rewrite the global rulebook. Africa is not some afterthought in the global power equation anymore. For far too long, the West has dominated the global stage, with Africa cast as a passive player, often dictated to, exploited, and marginalized. But that's changing. Africa is stepping into its power, bold, unapologetic, and ready to claim its place at the table. With its vast natural resources, strategic geopolitical position, and an economy that's growing faster than most of the world's, Africa is poised to be the next global powerhouse. And guess what? The world needs more powerful nations. In a world where the West has dominated for centuries, the balance of power is about to shift. The world cannot continue to be run by a few select powers, while the rest of humanity is sidelined. The West, which has long held the reins of global politics and economics, is no longer the undisputed leader. This new era is about multipolarity, an equal distribution of power, where multiple regions, including Africa, will rise to prominence. And that's exactly what's happening now. Africa, with its young population, resource wealth, and growing influence, will no longer be left out of the conversation. You might be thinking, what can Africa offer? It's a fair question, considering the decades of economic exploitation. Africa is sitting on a gold mine. The continent is rich in natural resources, some of which are not just important for the future, but critical for the world's survival. From minerals essential for tech production, like cobalt and lithium, to oil and agriculture, Africa holds the key to the global economy's next phase. These are the resources that tech giants, energy companies, and agricultural industries rely on to keep their economies functioning. Africa is the future, and the world is already feeling the pull. But it's not just about raw materials. Africa is also home to an intellectual capital that's ready to explode. The continent's young population is one of its greatest assets. With the average age of an African being under 20, the potential for innovation, technology development, and entrepreneurship is limitless. This demographic is eager to build and lead, not just be consumers. Africa's economic transformation will be driven by this vibrant, motivated generation that understands the value of self-sufficiency and is ready to take charge. As Africa's workforce becomes more skilled and educated, it will shift from being the world's supplier of cheap labor to a center for cutting-edge industries. Africa is no longer just a source of raw materials. It's a global player. The global stage is about to change. As African nations become more assertive and begin to unite, the West's monopoly on global politics will begin to crumble. For decades, Western powers have benefited from Africa's division and disunity, exploiting it through divide-and-conquer tactics. But Africa is starting to put aside old rivalries and focus on shared prosperity. This cooperation is already gaining momentum with regional alliances like the African Union and ECOWAS, which are building an economic and diplomatic bloc that is harder to ignore. With these partnerships strengthening, Africa will be able to stand its ground, demand respect, and ensure that its resources and labor are no longer taken for granted. Countries like China and Russia are already recognizing Africa's potential.
They are deliberately and aggressively targeting their investments in the region to gain a competitive advantage over the United States. Should this occur, the balance of power in the Horn of Africa, astride major arteries of maritime trade between Europe, the Middle East, and South Asia, would shift in favor of China.
We, the United States, is doing a lot of great work across the continent. I worry that it's not well known that we're providing this. At the same time, it's clear that China and Russia have a lot of influence in Africa. And this concerns me a lot. And I know it does concern you too. I mean, Africa has strategic importance to us for a number of reasons, including that many critical minerals that our defense industry requires are mined in Africa. And this is something that China knows, and they have begun to exploit. You know, last year, Senator Cotton and I introduced the Reshore Act to reduce our reliance on China for these critical minerals.
They're moving in with strategic investments that focus on mutual benefit, unlike the exploitative relationships of the past. Africa's geopolitical value has surged, and now global powers are lining up to engage with the continent, on Africa's terms. This is the beginning of a multipolar world where power is shared among several regions. In this new reality, Africa will no longer be the underdog. It will be an equal partner, respected for its role in the global order. In the end, we must admire Ghana's decision. Ghana just did something that every African nation should consider. It told the US to pack up and leave. It's not just about Ghana saying, "We don't need you." It's about reclaiming sovereignty in the most visible way possible. By closing the US military bases, Ghana is taking a stand that should be praised by every African country. This decision isn't just political, it's a moral statement. It tells the world that African countries are no longer willing to sit back and let foreign powers dictate their future. Now, the Western world might not like this move. They'll label it as dangerous or destabilizing. But here's the truth. This is exactly the kind of bold, assertive leadership Africa needs. This is a wake-up call for the West. Africa isn't just a land to be exploited and controlled anymore. It's time for the world to respect Africa's decisions and treat the continent as an equal, not as a subordinate. The big question is, will the West acknowledge this move as a sign of Africa's growing maturity and assertiveness? Or will they double down on their old habits, trying to undermine Africa's sovereignty? Ghana's move to close U.S. military bases could be the spark that ignites a continent-wide movement, and that's something the world needs to be prepared for. This is not just Ghana's victory, it's Africa's victory. So, what's next? Will Africa finally take its place as the global power it was always meant to be? Let us know in the comments section. Do you see more African nations doing what Ghana did? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something.
All right. So, let's talk about that. That was a long video. It's showing a culmination of what we already discussed previously in the previous stories. It is Africa's time. Is it Africa's time? Is Africa going to be able to really make a transition to control itself? And will other African countries come together and unite against foreign people, against foreign domination or rule? You know, will the colonial powers finally be thrown off? And this is something that has been in the making for, 60 years, since 60, 70 years, since the first African countries started to declare independence from colonialism. So, the first person to come to mind is Patrice Lumumba, which I think this was the vision of his to, bring Africa into its own sovereignty. Okay, for African countries to declare not just their independence, but to actually become sovereign, where they're able to, economically make decisions, okay, to be able to have control over their own resources. This is very powerful, people. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is our second episode. I will see you next week with more melanated news from around the world. And until then, people, stay safe and continue to grow and prosper. Tutanana.